Hello, this is Mr. Mitchell. I'd like to talk about some concepts in the novel House on Mango Street. That is a novel we're reading in class, and there's some things I'd like for you to know that are some concepts about it before we really get a whole lot long ways into it. So you can see on this slide that the first concept I want to talk about is style. Style is a writer's unique way of expressing themselves, and every author is going to have a little bit different style. It can come out in their choice of words, in their sentence structure, in their use of literary devices or rhythm or any other elements that writers may use. Now, a style of a magazine or newspaper writer is likely much different than the style of a short story or novelist. And even amongst novelists, you have somebody like Sandra Cisneros, who wrote The House on Mango Street. Her style could be much different than many other novelists, many other people who write books. And critics tend to call Cisneros' style poetic, that she has brevity and humor. Brevity means that she writes short chapters and short books. Her poetic style is full of imagery and wordplay, and she's going to have a whole lot of similes and metaphors and things such as that to kind of help her writing. So that's a little bit about style. The second concept I'd like for you to know is vignette. A vignette, and you can see how it's spelled on the screen, is a short descriptive scene that has no plot. Now, by plot, I mean rising action and conflict and things that happen in pretty much all stories. So a vignette is not really a story. It is words that kind of paint a picture. And you can see on the side I have 3 vignettes on this page, and they're very short. Now, they can be as short as a few sentences like this, or they can be as long as a few pages. In fact, some of the vignettes in House on Mango Street are a few pages. Now, the House on Mango Street is very unique in that all its chapters, every single one of them, are vignettes. And vignettes, remember, don't really have a plot. They don't really carry rising action, but they're like little individual snapshots, and this whole book is like little individual snapshots in the life of the main character, a little girl named Esperanza. So while the vignettes are not stories themselves, by seeing what is going on in Esperanza's life, we can see what the overall story is. So the author says that these individual vignettes contribute to the whole story like beads in a necklace. And that makes a lot of sense. If you have these individual beads, they don't make the story themselves until you get a bunch of them together and you can see the whole picture. The next concept I want you to know is theme. A theme is a repeated idea in a work of literature. Now, the theme also has nothing to do with the plot. The theme has more to do with ideas that come up in the work's message or just in general. And most stories have several themes. Some themes are quite common in literature themselves, and you can see on this slide that you often see themes of good versus evil and love and courage and heroism. I mean, that could be in many stories. And in this particular story, you're going to see that some of the themes, these ideas that just keep coming up over and over, are of oppressed women and coming of age and home and desperation of poverty. So you have themes that are in pretty much every written work that just kind of keep coming up over and over. And that is the characteristic of a theme. Number 4. What is a Bildungsroman? Ooh, that's an odd name, but a Bildungsroman is a German word for a coming-of-age story. These stories depict growth into maturity, and this particular novel, House on Mango Street, is a Bildungsroman. Bildungsroman is a German word that means a novel of formation. And this little girl who's the main character, Esperanza, when you read the first few chapters, she's going to sound like a little kid. But when you read the last few chapters, she is not. She has a much more mature sound to her, even though only about a year has lapsed between the first chapters and the last chapters. She has come of age. She has grown into maturity in this Bildungsroman type story. Number 5 is a juxtaposition. A juxtaposition is the arrangement of side-by-side opposites. So Cisneros uses it like having opposite characters with opposite characters doing actions that you would not expect. So when you have words that are opposites, side-by-side opposites together, like happy and tragedy, and deafening and silence, notice these are words that mean opposite of each other. They are often called an oxymoron. So a juxtaposition is kind of like an extended oxymoron. For example, if you have 5 characters in a room and the one that is acting the most mature is the youngest of the 5 characters, that would be an example of a juxtaposition. And you do have Cisneros, which uses juxtaposition a fair amount of time in this particular novel. Next one, and this is the last slide, by the way. So number 6 and number 7 are the last 2. Number 6, social commentary. So social commentary is the act of expressing an opinion on the nature of society. Now, I suspect that in most cases, the author writes a story just to tell the story. But social commentary kind of shows itself in the actions. For example, in House on Mango Street, the women's role in society and racial inequality became part of the story, even though you probably didn't, that just turned out to be part of the story itself, and it wasn't meant to. So the author probably didn't say, hey, I'm going to write a story on racial inequality or the women's role in society. But as she wrote the story of this child, Esperanza, it turned out that she did have incidents of this happening. There was one part of the book where the rich white kids got to eat at the school while the poor Hispanic kids were sent home for lunch. And the character was just sad that she couldn't stay and eat with some of the people she wanted to eat with at the school. It didn't ever really say this is good or this is bad, but by having that in there, the reader can see this is not equal. This is not this is something that is an injustice, even though the author didn't point out the injustice, it just happened to be part of the story. And finally, we have symbolism. Symbolism is a representation that has both a literal and symbolic meaning. There are 2 general types of symbols. We have universal symbols that have universally recognizable meanings. For example, the light. The light often has a symbol of something that is good. But that is something that's universal. You also have constructed symbols that are only given symbolic meaning by the way an author uses them. In this particular story, The House on Mango Street, you have 4 skinny trees. And those 4 skinny trees are going to represent Esperanza's culture and Esperanza's family. And outside of this story, 4 skinny trees really don't symbolize much of anything. So that would be an example of a constructed symbol. Hey, I hope you've learned a little bit about these themes in House on Mango Street.